welcome back.
Thank you.
This is the Whiskey and Wisdom Podcast. I'm your constant co-host, Chris Kellum, and I'm with
Tyler Y'all.
And this week, our special guest is
Rebecca Zimmer Donaldson.
Perfect. Wait, are you hyphenated or are you just full
Zimmer
name?
is my middle name.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
You're fancy.
Yes, real fancy.
My wife tried to do that too, except the Social Security Administration didn't do it right. So
no.
she just has two last names now. They're not hyphenated or anything, so people get super confused. But it's what it is.
It was such a pain to change my name. It took me like 3 years because I was like, I need to be sure
Right, yeah.
that my husband's the right one after marriage, because I'm not doing this again.
Right. I don't blame you.
Well, and it makes sense because you have a lot of paperwork.
Oh,
like
yeah.
everything is in Rebecca Zimmer. So you have to change
Everything. Driver's license, credit cards, passport, Social Security. It is a process.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I made it through.
I'm happy.
I committed.
Yeah. I'm happy you committed.
Me too.
Say when you're willing to go that far, you know it's serious.
Yes. I was like, all right, we've got 2 kids now. I'm committed.
Okay. I guess we could change my name.
Yeah, I guess it's time.
Well, so for those who want to know what we're drinking, me and Tyler are still sipping on our strawberry mint spritz.
We're getting old. We can only do so much in a day.
Yeah.
As we used to.
And this one has champagne in it. Like anytime you add bubbles, it like makes things a little weird. But it is Saint Germain, Tito's vodka, a little champagne, and a strawberry mint simple syrup with a little bit of muddling in it. And because Rebecca's a real adult, she's sipping on water. Responsible. There you go. Sipping on some. No, here we go. We'll cheers it up.
Is it bad luck if I do it with water?
As long as you drink it, you're good to go.
I guess it is a good thing that you are responsible. So let people know what
Yes.
you're running for.
Yes. So I am running to be district attorney of New Hanover and Pender counties.
So
That's great.
Thank you.
For those who are similar to me and don't know these things, I always thought the DA was just like for a city, or is it different for state, state?
Yes. So in New Hanover and Pender County, we are one prosecutorial district. There's different districts, and it has, because of our size and our population, we have 2 counties. So the DA is in charge here. It's prosecutorial district 6, and that is New Hanover County and Pender County.
Okay.
Yes.
Because you got to get closer.
Oh, sorry.
I know you talk really loud in the courtroom.
I know. I really am loud.
It's the randomness that comes to my brain. I've never been selected for jury duty, and I
Really?
finally showed up, and I was like, oh, these are like just normal people, like sitting having a conversation. Like the lady, I always forget these things, but the ADA who was prosecuting was just like, hey, asking the jurors questions. She's like, I have a few dogs, and like going back and forth. I'm like, oh, that's definitely different than what I'm used to, because all I've seen is Bull, the TV show.
Right. Yeah.
And you're like, so wait, is this not the process? You don't sit in the back room like watching a TV, knowing who to pick?
So jury selection for me and most attorneys is the most important part of any jury trial, because your worst fear is to have somebody who is going to vote based on the alignment of the stars, or, based on something that you can't control. So you want to have those normal conversations with people to make sure that they are normal people and not conspiracy theorists and going to go off on some tangent about something that has no relevance to what we are doing in the courtroom. So those normal conversations are a big part of what jury selection is.
I was in jury selection a few years back, and it was actually for a pretty big case too. And they were like, hey, this is going to be weeks. So you need to be ready for this. And it was actually a federal case.
Wow.
And so they were going through jury selection. I didn't get chosen, but I get to watch it, of course, right? And the one guy they bring up, I live in Brunswick County.
Okay.
And so they bring up this like good old boy, and like had never stepped foot into like a courtroom or anything of the sorts before, and they asked him the question. They were like, "This could go on a while. Is there going to be any issues that this is going on for 3 to 4 weeks?" He goes, "My mama tell me I can't come. I can't come." He was like, "No, if the judge tells you to come, you come." He goes, "Not before my mama." Oh. And they're like, "No, we need to hash this out real quick.
We both agree.
You will come." No. And they actually ended up choosing him to sit on
Are you serious?
Yeah, I was so surprised.
We had one woman, I just finished up a trial this past week. It was a rape trial. And we had one woman who was asked to be excused. And when you ask to be excused, you have to give a reason. Mm-hmm. She said, "I just love gossip too much. I could not keep what is going on in this courtroom to myself. I would have to tell other people." And we were like, "Ugh, all right.
Bye." We'll finish down this trail before I go back. I will have to say, as a male, I realize like we have a lot of privileges, and I did not realize how many women have been affected by like spousal abuse, domestic violence, because we went through so many jurors and multiple people had been affected by it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where there's like 50 people in a room and they're going through and they're picking 12, 13 jurors or whatever, and how many people have been affected. And it's just such a small population. So I just want to say, talk to your friends, be open about it. Don't accept the bullshit.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask for help. There's help. There's resources out there. The district attorney's office is always willing to help and to direct you to where those services are. So you are not alone. There are many people who have gone through this journey before. There will unfortunately be many more after you, but it is important to stand up and to call out what is wrong and not subject yourself to that.
Yeah.
So before we talk about kind of what you're running for now, so what exactly are you prosecuting now?
So right now I handle all of the child sex cases. I handle all of the adult rape cases, and I handle all of the murders in Pender County.
Jeez, God bless you.
Yeah.
That's intense.
It can be. It can be.
Wow.
Did you get to pick that, or he was like, "All right, here you go"?
It sort of goes, you start out handling misdemeanor cases, which are the difference between misdemeanor and felony, so they're lower level cases. You then move up and you handle felony cases. You handle lower level felony cases, so you would handle, low level drugs, low level property cases, low level assaults, and then you sort of go up and you handle the higher level cases. So after a certain amount of experience, you're expected to handle the bigger cases and the more labor-intensive cases.
That makes sense. So we'll talk about working your way up.
Yeah.
How'd you end up here? Because unfortunately, actually I lie. Fortunately enough, I'm from Wilmington, so I know that your family's from here.
Yes.
So give us a little backstory.
Yeah. So I was born and raised here in Wilmington. I graduated from Hoggard High School. I went off to University of Miami. I graduated from there, undergrad, and then I went to American in D.C. for law school.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't really know what state I wanted to practice in, so for me, I was going to a central school where they weren't really going to be teaching state law. It was more a broad education, which is what I was looking for. And right after law school, I was hired my 3L year, so my third year of law school, I was hired by the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. Wow. And it was a very competitive entry. It was 4 rounds of interviews. Jeez. It was very intense. The last one being with the district attorney. And so I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor. And I figured if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. So I started my career in Brooklyn, New York.
Wow.
I was one of 600 prosecutors in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, second largest office in the country. And I rose in the ranks there and ended up leaving when I was handling violent felony cases there. The pandemic hit. during this time, I had already married my husband, who was a deputy with the New York City Sheriff's Department.
Oh, wow.
And we had just had our second daughter on January 1st of 2020. So I like to say the only good thing to come from 2020 was my daughter, Sailor. And so my husband at the time, he was a lieutenant with the Sheriff's Department, and he was on a COVID task force. So he was serving warrants to people that were known to have COVID. And I had a newborn at home, and my older daughter had just turned a year old.
Oh.
So I'm on maternity leave, and I was like, look, love you, honey, but we're going to ride this out back at home, thinking it was going to be a week or 2 weeks. And still I had about 2 weeks of my maternity leave left. So came back home, stayed with my family here, so I could have some help also.
Right.
And then as you know, things just got progressively worse. And I was working remotely from Wilmington into my Brooklyn office. And then a job opened up here at the district attorney's office. So I left the Brooklyn DA's office on a Tuesday, and I started working here on a Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Quick turnaround.
It was a quick turnaround, but it was the biggest blessing. This office has been incredible, and I've been able to learn and to grow and to become the prosecutor I am today because of it.
Yeah. And I don't know a lot about what kind of goes behind, but it seems like Ben David has been a pretty decent person to work for because he's run unopposed for so long. So, like, when you have no one that's even willing, like, hey, he's doing a great enough job, I'm not going to run against them.
Exactly.
I mean, that must say something.
It sure does. And he has been an incredible boss. He has always told us, you know, he hires good people and he trusts them. And so we have an enormous amount of discretion in what we do and how we prosecute cases.
Oh, yeah.
He also is very adamant that we put our family first. And so if there are certain, you know, soccer games I want to go to or events, recitals my daughters are in, he encourages us to do that. And that's something I want to continue when I'm the district attorney, because I think when you are making it work at home, you're bringing your best to work, and you can make it work at work as well.
Nice.
He also encourages us to get out in the community and volunteer, and gives us 2 hours on Fridays. Every other Friday we get 2 hours off so we can go and volunteer in the community.
Oh, that's great.
Which I think is pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish. Like, anyway, it's just a great concept.
Yeah.
Talking about being a lawyer, you said you wanted to be a prosecutor.
I did, yes.
I'm assuming most people in your family aren't prosecutors.
They are not. They were very surprised when I said I wanted to be a prosecutor because my dad and my uncle were big-time defense attorneys here in town. So when I told them I wanted to be a prosecutor, they were incredibly supportive, but I think it was a shock to them.
I'm sure.
Yes, so I went into, and I actually credit Ben David for the reason I wanted to become a prosecutor, and I can tell you a little bit about that. So my first year of law school, I completed my first year, and during the summers you're expected to have internships. And so during that first year, I did a split internship. So the first half of the summer I worked at a defense firm, and the second half I worked for Ben David as an intern at this office. So this, gosh, it must have been like more than 10 years ago. It's crazy. So when I was working at the defense firm, part of my responsibility was to pick up an individual who was turning himself in to go to prison for possession of child pornography.
Oh, wow.
So my boss said, hey, pick him up from the airport, take him to lunch, and then bring him to the courthouse for him to be sentenced.
Yep.
So I pick him up, we go to lunch. I'm trying to make small talk with this man, and I'm like, how was your flight? And he was like, well, you know, there was lots of kids on the flight, and they were screaming, and you know I like kids, but not like that. And I was like, oh, my God, what am I doing? What am I doing?
Okay, yeah.
Yep, fair enough.
So that was eye-opening. And then to transition from that to going to Ben David's office. Mm-hmm. And he does such a good job with the interns. And he told us about one case that really sticks out in my mind, and it was this day that solidified that this was going to be my life's work. And so he tells this story about this woman named Dora Corbett, and she was the matriarch of her family in Pender County. She was 78 years old. She was a widow, living alone. She fell asleep that night in her home with her glasses on. She had a book open and fell asleep. When she woke up, her glasses were broken, and she was being punched in the face. She went to go block her face, and she couldn't because her arms were tied down or tied to the bedposts. She was brutally assaulted and brutally raped and left for dead. Her attacker left her thinking she was dead, and she was somehow able to get out of these binds and make her way to her car.
Wow.
Her eyes were swollen shut, so she had to literally open her eye with one hand as she drove with the other hand. She drove to a house, and she laid on the horn, and she got the attention of the people inside, who called the police and came and tried to help her. When the ambulance got there, the people's house that she was at, they didn't recognize her until she was going into the ambulance because they recognized her shoes. That was their mom.
Oh, my goodness.
That's how bad she was beaten and just disfigured. And Ben tells this story of this case and how he was able to get justice and how he was able to take this case to court and send this man to prison for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And it's like light bulbs went off in my head, and I said, oh, my God. Like, what meaningful work to be able to stand up for victims like that in court and to be able to advocate for them. And I've never looked back since. And my entire law school career after that was every prosecution class I could take. It was prosecutorial ethics, prosecuting gang crime. It was externships at a prosecutor's office, getting those experiences as a trial attorney. And then knowing immediately I wanted to be a prosecutor. So this has been my life's work over the last 9 years and even before that in law school. And it's something I'm very passionate about. And standing up for victims, I think, is one of the biggest honors that I could have to advocate on their behalf.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because most races are run on like so many like crazy platforms, and they're typically very, very different.
Yeah.
I noticed that your platform, like when it comes to the DAs, like the platform and the person you're running against, you guys have very similar like things that you're shooting for.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask this before I jump around to the next thing.
Yeah.
What's the, like if you're both prosecuting, I saw like fentanyl and like rape cases, what are those big differences, or like what's the difference between you versus the person you're going against?
Well, I think you've got to look at the person and who they are. And ultimately, this person is going to not only lead our office, but be a leader within the community. And I think I'm the best person suited to do that. You know, we like to think that, or there's preconceived notions that Republicans are tough on crime and Democrats are soft on crime. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I think we come from a place of being smart on crime. And that's what I am trying to advocate. So it doesn't matter if you're a Republican. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat. What I can say is I have never asked a victim on a rape case, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? And I can honestly say, too, I have never cross-examined a defendant on the stand, whether they're charged with murder or rape. I've never asked them, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? Crime is crime. And so what you point out is very astute, because there are so many differences when it comes to Republicans and Democrats. But when it comes to fighting crime, there's a lot of similarities. We're really looking to reduce crime, to keep victims safe, to make this community a safer place for everybody to live in. And so it really we've got a lot of the same goals in mind. It's about how you're going to achieve those. And I think that's where we really have the biggest difference. So for me, I think that prisons and jails, violent offenders belong there. Mm-hmm. People who commit the types of crimes that I am prosecuting, the rapes, the murders, the child abuse, the, breaking into your homes, people who are suffering from substance use disorders or mental health issues, they don't belong in our jails and our prisons. Mm-hmm. They belong in treatment. And I think we can save taxpayers a lot of money by sending them to treatment as opposed to jail. And I think we make our community a lot safer by doing that. We stop this revolving door because what we see a lot of the times is when somebody has a substance use disorder, if they're addicted to something, then they are committing crimes to get money to fuel that addiction. Mm-hmm. So one day they might be a victim of a crime, another day they might be a defendant of a crime. Right. They may have a small amount of crack cocaine on them. They then will use that and then be out and then break into a car, steal something from a car, then go and pawn it at a pawn shop. I mean, it's just an endless cycle. So if we break that cycle, if we get to the root cause of the problem, we stop all of that crime from happening. And that's really what I want to promote and really what I want to advance in New Hanover County and Pender County.
Nice.
Because currently we don't have any treatment programs in Pender County, which is such a shame.
I was going to ask, I'm not aware of one in Pender County at all. So I guess
there's not. There's not. I've already started talking to county commissioners who are running and seeing what we can do to work together because people are worth investing in.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
for sure.
We would never say that somebody with diabetes, that's their fault.
Right.
Yet when somebody has a substance use disorder, we go to, well, it's their fault. They're choosing to use these substances when really they're addicted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can get people the help that they need to get back to being a contributing member of society, I think we all benefit.
Yeah. So one of the questions I always like to ask for people who are just running for office in general is what made you crazy enough to even run to begin with?
That's a great question. So I have never had any desire to be a politician ever. Mm-hmm. And I like to say I'm a prosecutor. I am not a politician.
Right.
Ben David retiring really opened up a need for somebody with roots in this community who really cares about this community and somebody who has done this work and done it successfully and who has a vision for the future to step up. And somebody that fit that bill had not stepped up. And so I decided to step up.
Yeah.
That's great.
Nice.
That's kind of what I always see as like someone who's doing it for the right reasons, right? It's like you see that void and there's the people that I've noticed have done best in those type of positions are like, that person would be great. And then they just don't have the I don't know what it is for different people. There's something that keeps them back. So whether it may be a family, whatever, it keeps them back from actually doing it and be like, you know what? I think I can fill those shoes.
Yeah.
So I greatly appreciate you knowing that, hey, you know what? This is the time to do it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're very young.
Yes. Thank you.
I will always say, I go back and forth. I always think I'm 30 until I talk to somebody. I'm like, oh, nope, I am not still 30. But I realized how young you were, not in a bad way.
Yeah.
But do you think for those older people out there, do you think that'll have an effect on how you do your job? Or do you think it'll assist you in that longevity of staying and hopefully helping this community?
That's a great question. And so for anybody who doesn't know, I'm 34 years old, been a prosecutor for 9 years now. When Ben David was elected, he was 34 years old, and he had 5 years as experience as a prosecutor.
Oh, wow.
Huh.
So what I can say is I am very similarly situated as far as age and have almost double the amount of experience as a prosecutor. I think that is one thing that is probably coming from the other side, saying I'm, too young, too inexperienced. But a man who was similarly situated was not too inexperienced.
Yeah. So that was one of my like I said, I have a lot of random questions, but
please
I always
ask
think
away.
about that because when elections come up, we almost always see older people running for positions because they're like, oh, well, I've already done what I need to do in life, so I have the money, let me go run for politics. But I think we're at a time, again, in life where we need a change, where older people should be like, okay, sometimes we should let somebody younger, try and shift and transition things.
I totally agree with that.
One of these, I will make note, I don't always have questions pre-planned because I'm super silly. But for once, I actually wrote out a few for you.
Yeah.
They're both going to be political / law related versus silly.
Okay. Oh, no, I'm excited.
Okay. So to start with, and I prepped her because I asked her this question a while ago. What was your favorite color when you were like 16?
Okay. So yes, we've talked about this. It was this pink color, but I couldn't find it anywhere. And it was the color I had as my nail polish. And one of my, I don't know what you would call it, things I do that probably annoy my husband to know, and I love to peel off my nail polish. So I would paint them daily, and it was this one specific pink color. So I brought it to Lowe's or Home Depot, I couldn't remember, and I had them mix this color so I could paint my walls this like hot pink color. So yeah, hot pink would probably be it, or a teal color, I would say.
Interesting. Sorry. Like I said, I come up with these random ones and I had to ask her this because we were sitting there when I originally asked her to come on the podcast, and she was like, "You've asked random questions, like what?" And Tyler always kills me because he's like, "Chris, you realize the random questions you have are typically people's security answers?" And I was like, 16 is not going to be a security answer, so that's why I picked 16 as a random one. But a legitimate question.
Yeah, ask.
That's more law related. I noticed while sitting on jury duty that there are different charges in North Carolina. And because I am a law-abiding citizen most of the time, I mean,
just plead the fifth.
You can't always go 45 miles an hour. Sometimes you got to go 47. See?
Good job, Chris.
There you go. But I noticed that there was a different, like we were sitting there and there was an assault on a female charge. Mm-hmm. And in my head, I'm like, I argue both sides in almost every case. And I'm like, why is there an assault on a female charge different from just a traditional assault on a domestic partner?
So historically, there has been a difference. And I think that the legislature and General Assembly have tried to account for the fact that there is a power dynamic there, that there is, gender violence. Mm-hmm. And before January 1st of 2024, if a man and a woman got into a fist fight, a woman would be charged with simple assault, which is a Class 2 misdemeanor, mm-hmm. and a male would be charged with assault on a female, which is a Class A1 misdemeanor, which is a higher charge.
Okay.
There have recently been changes in our law. So now there is a domestic partner assault, which takes into account, it could be parent-child, it could be caretaker, it could be two people in a relationship. They could have had a prior relationship. It takes into account same-sex couples. And so I think there has been a shift in trying to equalize people and hold each party accountable. But historically, there had been a difference there.
Timely, Chris. Good job.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't realize it was that recent.
Yeah.
I just know, being in the South, we have a lot of silly, like, there are some antiquated laws and some laws that make sense.
Yep.
So that one I was like, I didn't know that was a case. Mostly because I've never had to deal with that personally, like I mentioned earlier. So because you were in Pender County,
Yes.
another question based off this. Is it still illegal to live with the opposite sex if you're not married? Do you know that?
That's a good question. It's not one that is enforced.
Okay.
I don't know if it's even still on the books. I'd have to check on that, but that is not one we have ever charged in recent history, as far as I know.
I just remember this because I know somebody, it had to be on TikTok, somewhere on social media, where like a teacher lost their position because they were cohabitating with somebody.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, what is this mess? And I never saw the year of it. I just always remember seeing this pop up. I was like, similar to like you're not supposed to spit on the ground in like certain states.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, the silliness.
Is that one of those things that, like, since it's never, like, if someone randomly decided to, like, prosecute for something like that, would a judge throw that out because it's never been done before? Like, don't you have to hold up, like, a certain standard? Like, you can't, like, pick and choose.
I mean, technically you could go forward on it if it's on the books. If you prove every element of every crime, a judge could say that's silly, not guilty.
Right.
But it's still a charge, I guess, that if it's still on the books that you could technically go forward on.
Sorry. Like I said, I have a lot of silly things.
It's a drinking podcast. It is what it is.
I'm here for it.
So, going back, I go forward, go back.
Yeah.
Politics-wise,
Yeah.
my twofold question. One, and I ask this because I like to ask questions based on like a non-educated person, like when it comes to political. Are judges in this area nominated, or are they just like, how do you become a judge in this area?
So that's actually a great question. So before 2018, judges did not have to pick a party to run.
Okay.
So they were nonpartisan.
I mean, shouldn't they not be part?
I could get on a soapbox for this. I don't think district attorneys should have to pick a party, and I don't think judges should have to pick a party because politics has no place in a courtroom.
Right.
No place in a courtroom. But judges now have to run as either a Democrat or Republican. And if there is an open seat, a governor in certain circumstances can appoint a judge.
Okay.
But then that person would have to run for the next cycle. So if there is somebody retired early, and in certain circumstances the governor could appoint somebody, but then after that appointment would end, they would have to run.
Okay, that makes sense. That's so silly.
I know.
Makes no sense.
I know.
At least, this is a side tangent. Why does it have to be D or R? Could it not be like, could you not run as Libertarian or Green, or is that just how North Carolina is?
You can choose any party, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
you could choose any party.
okay.
We just haven't had.
You should have ran as a Libertarian. You would have gotten so many votes based on our podcast numbers. No, I joke with my wife because I am like the most apolitical person, and she loves it and hates it at the same time. I'm like, people are people.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather know what your personal belief is and how you're going to choose things, not whether or not, are you a Democrat or you're a Republican?
Yeah.
Like, that's why I wanted you to come on, because I'm like, there are people who are going to see, it's blue. I shouldn't vote for her. I should vote for her. And I'm like, I want them to vote what makes sense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So
it kind of like takes the point of the whole like justice is blind thing out of it.
correct.
When you have a color or a name behind you.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
It does.
Like, isn't that the point of the logo? Like, isn't she supposed to like have a blindfold and like holding up the scales?
That's correct.
Who came
I
up
could
with
go
those
on
rules?
and on about this. I mean, we've got to come to a place where politics does not affect our courtroom.
Right.
And I will say it until I am blue or red in the face, that I am a prosecutor. I am not a politician. And so I will work with anybody. I will, it doesn't matter to me if a defendant is a Republican or a Democrat. It doesn't matter if my victims are a Democrat or a Republican, or vote for me or don't vote for me. I will represent them equally in court.
Thank you. Which leads to, would you ever want to be a judge? I don't know the hierarchy. Like, I work in a jewelry store, so I know that the hierarchy is like salesperson, manager, district, blah, blah, blah. Like, would you ever want to move up to like a judge position based on your current life?
I don't think so. I get asked this question a fairly decent amount. And I respect judges and, really look up to them. And I often say, I'm like, why be an umpire when you can play ball?
Okay. Very true.
Yeah.
I
That's
That's a good
applaud
way
that.
of, I like that.
Which leads to my other question.
Yeah.
Who chooses if it's a judge trial or a jury trial? Is it just like it's already written in the books?
So for misdemeanor cases, they are all it is just a bench trial, which is just the judge.
Okay.
You have an automatic right to appeal if you get convicted of a misdemeanor, and you can then go to Superior Court, which you have a right to a jury trial. And it is assumed you have a jury trial unless both sides waive and say, we will agree to just have a judge hear this case. So any appeal from a misdemeanor or a felony case, you are entitled to a jury trial.
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked those questions as the guy who was like, I loved social studies.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I'm with my wife, is because I love like knowing the social aspect of life. But there's certain levels of things where I'm like, I don't know that answer.
Yeah.
So that's why I had to ask.
That's why you have a podcast.
Yeah, so I can
ask
randomly
all
ask
questions
people.
we need to.
And answered.
Yes. On a more fun note,
Yes.
would you be, two questions. One, how'd you pick Miami? Is it just where you got accepted, or you're like, I'm trying to get as far away from us, but on the coast?
I was like, let's have some fun. And I couldn't think of a more fun school.
Yeah. Well, sure. Well, and I did ask that because your cousin also randomly went to law school in Florida.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? That's so.
Yeah. I went to go visit, and I was like, yeah, this is it. This is my school.
And then you went
Then
almost the
DC.
complete
Yeah.
opposite.
And then I was like, let's get serious.
Okay.
Let's go to Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you
Was
left.
that kind of like a culture shock going from Miami to DC?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. People were much more serious, much more politically involved. And, I mean, law school is just so intense anyways.
Right.
You didn't
That
just,
put in that serious environment, too. It was, yeah.
You didn't just read the law book and just memorize everything and just skip over?
No. So I am one of those people that I need to have a quiet space. I need to have like earplugs in. I need to be focused and concentrating, and then just studying nonstop. And when we moved back to Wilmington, my husband decided to go to law school.
wow.
And he would do, the first year was online because it was during COVID. So he would listen to his lectures on his AirPods while he was golfing. And I was like, you're going to flunk out. This
didn't.
is not going to work. And this man made straight A's. And I was like, how is this possible? Are you that far superior and smarter that you can just play golf and learn the law? Whereas I'm like, holed up in like a cubby in the library, really having to like put all of my time and attention into this, and he's just whoop.
But I realized, like, well, one, I didn't just realize this. I've known this for a long time because my family are all educators. But like everyone learns things differently,
Right.
And I understand that because I remember sitting in class, and the one class I've ever been kicked out of, I was reading a book, and my teacher was like, "Hey, we're going over homework. Do you not have any questions, or do you not want to be here?" And I'm like, "Well, this book's more interesting." I'm like, I understood what he was saying. Like, I processed everything. I was like, homework's not due for another week and a half. I'm just going to read this. And he did not like that. But that's when I realized, like, everyone learns things differently.
Yes.
And then I came into the adult world, and we have people I work with, and some people, like, I can sit there and hear someone talk about it. And I'm like, okay, cool. I remember all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have other people who are like, no, I have to take notes. Like, if I'm listening to it, it's not going to affect me.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, I can't send you to training for all of these things because, one, that's expensive, and two, we still have to make money.
Right.
So I see the difference between your husband.
Yes. And we have to take that into account when we're giving closing arguments to a jury.
Right.
We have to understand that we've got different people who are going to learn and understand things differently. So at least for me, I always try and have a PowerPoint. I try and have the audio played again. I try to reiterate stuff, just speaking to them and making sure that they get it that way, so I'm able to appeal to all different types of learners.
To kind of play off of Chris's question into kind of your answer at the same time, is the only class I've been kicked out of, it was a debate class.
Oh, yeah, I knew that.
And the reason for it is because I was debating on something that the teacher actually made me switch sides because he knew I was passionate about the other side of it. But since I already knew the other side, which is why I was good at debating it, I was winning the debate, and then they basically argued my own point. And I looked at the teacher and I said, "Did I win?" And I got kicked out of the class. So come to find out, it wasn't the right thing to do. But the question out of that is, do you enjoy prosecuting because of the debate part of it? Or is there like other portions that kind of like really fill your cup when it comes to like sitting on or actually being part of a trial?
So that's a good question. I think if you were to ask my dad, he would say, I just love the debate part of it.
Right.
He said, I've been training to be a lawyer since I could speak at 2 years old. For me, that's an exciting part of it, but the fulfilling part is being able to get justice.
Yeah.
And to being able to stand with a victim and know that they were heard and they were believed, and they've got people fighting for them is what makes it worth it for me.
This is a weird question.
Yeah.
And if you prefer not to answer, that's fine too. Has there been a time where you've been prosecuting a trial, whether it's what you're doing now or previous before, where it was not obvious, but you could tell like maybe the defendant was actually innocent and you still had to prosecute that case, or are those typically thrown out by the time it gets to that point?
So what is awesome about being a prosecutor is our job is literally to do the right thing. If a case comes to me and I don't have enough evidence to prove it, I sign a form and I dismiss it on the spot. I would never bring a case that I didn't believe I could prove to trial. So by that point, not only am I convinced, but I believe I have enough to convince an entire jury of 12 people that this person's committed the crime that we're alleging. So it's an enormous power that a prosecutor has.
Right.
And with it comes a huge responsibility.
Sure, yeah.
But if I were ever to find evidence that a person did not do a crime, I would dismiss that on the spot the same day and make sure that they were out of custody. And likewise, if I was just prosecuting a crime and realized I didn't have enough, I still think the person did it, but I don't have enough evidence to prove that they did it, I couldn't go forward on that either.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So those are things I always just kind of think about, like when it comes to like the prosecutors and like how the whole thing works. So it's good to actually hear it,
Yeah.
like from you. That's kind of like the thought process behind
Yeah.
it.
She's a good one.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Reverse. Would you, well, two questions. One, why don't you prosecute in New Hanover County?
So I did for 3.5 years. I've
Okay.
just been in Pender County for like the last 6 or 7 months.
Oh,
Handling those types of cases because there was a need out there for somebody to step in and handle those cases.
I was curious because I was looking at, I sometimes do research. And when it comes to politics and like people that affect my local, I'm like, let's do a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I was curious about that. I was like, is it because you live here that you can't prosecute here or whatnot? And but that makes more sense. It's like, hey, if there's a need, you're willing to step up and fill it and kind of do what needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Would you be okay if your children became prosecutors, or did you want them to do something different?
I would be so proud if they were prosecutors.
Okay.
My oldest daughter, talks all the time. If you were to just ask her randomly what she wants to be a prosecutor. And so she actually, for school last year, they got to dress up as what they wanted to be when they grow up. And so we got her a little mini suit. And so
awesome.
she wore the mini suit, and my youngest daughter wants to be a daddy when she grows up. So she dressed up as a dad.
Nice. And that's interesting. Like, how does she perceive a daddy?
It's unclear.
Because I'm like, both of you guys are working
Yeah.
consistently.
Yeah,
Okay. Interesting.
it's unclear what goes through a 4-year-old's mind.
Exactly.
True.
I have a 4-year-old as well. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
no
they're
telling.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a random day, my 4-year-old might want to be an elephant. So I mean,
Yeah. For a while, it was a frog, so we've
yeah.
come a long way.
I mean, that's a whole nother statement. Okay. So, in general, I have one of my final questions.
Yeah.
What does success look like for you?
So for me, in the role as a district attorney, that looks like lower crime rates, lower violent crime. It looks like the community coming together, and for the community to know that the district attorney's office cares and that we are there to support the community and to make it a better place for everybody. So in my job, that's what success would look like. As an individual, it looks like raising my kids in a way that they are proud of themselves and that they're kind. I think in a world where you can be anything, being kind is so important.
Yes.
And for them to not lose sight of that. So to raise my kids in a way where they know that no matter what they choose to do, that we will support them and we will love them. And just making the community a better place for them to grow up in.
Yeah.
And to just build on relationships, because I think you can, as my boss likes to say, you can make a dime or you can make a difference. And so this is my path to make a difference.
Nice. So I'm going to, before you get this,
Okay.
I'm gonna get real serious for half
Yeah.
a second. Do you think your grandfather would be proud of what you're doing?
Oh, that question makes me want to tear up. I think he would be the proudest person ever, because he was such an incredible man. And a lot of who I am today is because of him. He never met a stranger. He loved this town. He loved this community. He planted roots here. And, you know, I still go places today, and he passed away more than 20 years ago. And people still come up to me and say, was Bill your grandfather? Let me tell you about this story. Let me tell you about how he knew me and my kid and my kid's kid, and would name everybody by name. He was a person that cared and really wanted to make a difference in this community, and really instilled in me that when you do well, you give back. And that's what I want to do. And I think he would be incredibly proud. Yeah.
For those who don't know, her granddad's Bill Zimmer. He started Reed's Jewelers, and she posted something the other day about that. So I was like, let's throw that plug in, help you.
Yeah.
Full disclosure to both of us, Chris still works at Reed's. I used to work at Reed's. And to your point too, though, I didn't have the pleasure to meet your grandfather.
Yeah.
However, it felt like I had.
Yeah.
Because of all the people that would come in and tell those stories.
Yeah.
So that is like a huge testament to him and your whole family.
Yep.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming on too. And I do have one final question for you as well. Continuing to look back a little bit, if you were to tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to stand up for what is right and what you believe in. No matter what people might say, if you know in your heart you are doing the right thing, it is worth fighting for. And people are worth fighting for.
That's fantastic. I love that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So because we are here to promote you,
Yes.
where can people follow your trail, or how do they vote for you when the time shows up?
So early voting starts October 17th. Yes,
sooner
it's
than
very
that, right?
early.
Mail outs go out September 6th, I believe.
Okay, that makes more
Yeah.
sense.
So starting October 17th, you can go to the polls. Make sure you're registered to vote. You can find me on donaldsonforda.com. All of my, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, we're on X, Rebecca Zimmer Donaldson. And yeah,
Cool.
Appreciate you coming on and
Thank you so
answering all of our
much.
crazy questions.
absolutely, this was fun.
Yeah. Sorry, it wasn't as crazy. It could get worse. If you,
Round two.
so we'll
I
think
was like, next time,
positively
after you win.
Yes,
Yeah.
when you win, we'll have to get you on and ask some crazier questions.
I would love that.
Not like questions that you can answer. How about that?
Would love that.
Even better.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. This was great.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Cheers.
See you next one.